Welcome to Open Network Expert Guidance Office Hours. Excited to have you here today. And in the interest of time, let's get rolling so we can get to as many questions as possible. Before we dive into our topics, a couple of logistical items. You can ask questions throughout the duration of today's presentation using the Q&A button on the Zoom toolbar. We have a bunch of handshakers on the back end who will be helping to answer as many questions as we possibly can. So as a question occurs to you, feel free to send it in. We're also going to save a lot of time at the end of today's session to do live Q&A. So we'll also answer as many questions live as we can, as well as some of the top ones that we've already answered via Q&A. So basically, send them in and we'll do as many as we can. If we can't get to every single question today, please don't hesitate to follow up with your relationship manager or come to another office hours session. We just scheduled 2 more of these. They're still bi-weekly on Thursdays, just an hour later. So if you check out the registration page where you register for this session, you'll find 2 new sessions available if you want to come. Finally, we will be recording today's session and posting it and emailing it out to all registrants tomorrow. So you'll get a copy of that you can review or share with your colleagues. My name's Britt, that's me on the right. I work in product marketing here at Handshake, and I'm joined by 2 of my wonderful colleagues, Kajal and Brendan, from our product team, who are going to be walking us through many of the features that we'll be discussing today. So grateful to have them on the line, and you'll hear more from them in a minute. But here are today's topics. So I'm going to start us off by just walking through high level the areas that we're going to be focusing on today. So what are the features that we'll be demoing and talking about? Then we'll move into the actual demos and talking a little bit about future updates you can expect to see on these fronts. Finally, we'll cap things off with a recap of some resources you can use to learn more about these features, to share with your team, to educate them. And then finally, we'll move into the live Q&A portion. But as I mentioned 2 slides ago, you can submit questions throughout today's presentation. All right, so let's kick things off with areas of focus. The features that we're discussing today are all a part of Handshake's vision to help your students access more opportunity on our platform and save your team time, and more thoroughly embed your team's expertise into the Handshake experience. So the first feature we're going to talk about today is signal boosting via employer collections. This feature allows your team to highlight employers with a unique quality, like a commitment to DE&I, or being close to campus, or being great for students in a particular college, to your students. So this is that embedding piece. We want to help you better highlight employers that are should really be of note to your students. Signal boosting is live as of late July. Ooh. Next, we're going to talk about employer tags, which help your team filter for employers you might like to review based on something like being a cannabis company or a third-party recruiter. Tags are primarily generated based on the decline reasons that your peers select when declining an employer. So they are a great way for you to identify those employers that probably require an extra look. Tags are also live as of last month. Next up, we're going to talk about job auto approval rules. This feature helps your team save time by allowing you to auto approve jobs while setting exceptions for the types of jobs you want to review manually. So for example, you could auto approve all jobs except for part-time jobs, or you could auto approve all jobs except for out-of-state jobs. So those out-of-state jobs will come into a review queue for you, while the rest will go through and be auto approved. Job auto approval rules are set to launch later this month. And then finally, we'll talk about employer validation. So employer validation is a process that's actually going to launch after back to school. So we meant to update this to say late fall 2022. Apologize that didn't update. But basically, this is all about taking the onus of vetting employers for legitimacy off of your team, and having Handshake monitor the platform for fraud from the point an employer creates their account through their entire tenure on Handshake. So as I mentioned, employer validation will be fully launched later this fall, and that's going to allow us to remove the trust score, which has become an inconsistent indicator of employer legitimacy. And Kajal is going to talk more about this rollout schedule shortly. So before we dive into our demos, I just want to get a quick sense of where everyone's interests lie. So I'm going to launch a quick poll. And you can select 1, 2, all 4 of these, but just curious, based on the features that I just discussed, what are you most interested in learning about today? We're still going to run through everything, but just want to kind of learn where people are the most interested. So I will keep this open for, say, another 15 seconds or so. No pressure to participate, but thanks everyone for kind of giving us a sense of where the most questions are going to lie today. All right, giving it another 5 seconds or so. All righty, ending the poll. And here are those results. You can see we've got a distribution across all 4 topics, but most folks interested in job auto approval rules and employer validation. That's great. We're actually going to have a live demo of job auto approval rules today, which is a first for office hours. So we're excited about that. All righty. I am going to pass it over to Brendan.
All right, let me share my screen. Good to see everyone. We're thrilled to have you here. I'm going to walk through 3 demos today, so you're going to be seeing a lot of me, but really excited about all the features that we have released and have coming up. So the first is signal boosting via employer collections. I think we've shown this quite a few times, but it doesn't hurt to run through again. This has been in released since, I think, earlier in the summer in July, and we are super thrilled to be, super thrilled to have released this, super thrilled to be enhancing this and showing it off today. So signal boosting via employer collections is a great way for your team to essentially recommend employers to your students based on specific criteria that could be a good fit for them. So the first thing we added was this new employer summary side sheet here on the approved employers tab, which will give you a good sense of how this employer is engaging with your institution, the type of jobs that they post, where those jobs are generally posted, the position types, upcoming activity that they may have, fairs, events, how they've engaged in activities over the past year, things like student engagement. If they have first destination survey results, we put that there, and then generally more information about the company. And this is really a great way for your team to assess, okay, like, does this employer make sense? Do they engage with us enough for us to potentially highlight them to our students? From there, you click edit employer collections. We've defined, I believe it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 collections, and we plan to add more collections in the future. But currently, these are the 9, and they're all based on reasons that we've surveyed students. We surveyed all of you to kind of determine what are the best reasons we should put that kind of resonate the most with our EDU partners, that resonate the most with our students, and it's kind of unique insight that Handshake probably doesn't have without the the context provided by our career centers. So as you can see, you can add an employer to these collections. Great for college is one where you can essentially pick a college and it will target that students within that group. Once you've added them to a collection, you can go ahead and save. I will first show you how it looks within the student experience, and then I will show you some of the things that you can do with it within the EDU side. So let's go ahead and switch to student. I'll show you where this lives today, and then I'll talk a little bit about some of the enhancements that we're currently working on as well. So, okay, right now as a student, this lives on the Career Center homepage. The Career Center homepage, we believe, is a great hub for this information. It is essentially, it's one of the most trafficked pages. So it's like the 3rd most trafficked page on Handshake behind jobs, and it's highly engaged with. So students are coming here for your information, for your resources, and definitely want to see the employers that you are curating. You can go ahead and view all collections. Then you will see the employers that you've boosted. If I am a part of a college that has a collection boosted to it, like my student is part of the College of Education, I will see those employers. The employers are listed in the order of relevance, so you don't need to worry about the order in which they show up. Essentially, we're going to show them up in the order of which they make sense to the student. And currently, there's a limit per collection of 50 employers. So you can add 50 employers to a collection at a time. And yeah, we've seen really, really great traffic on these pages and really great engagement. So a lot of our students are coming here, they're following employers, which is amazing. And it's a really core action, right? That means they're being alerted to anytime that employer is, posting jobs, things of that nature. Okay, now I will switch it back to the Career Center side, and I'll show you some of the enhancements that we've made to let me close this, sorry. I'll show some enhancements that we've made to our targeted emails. So go to emails. We've created a way for you to essentially highlight content from boosted employers within your targeted emails. So we've added a way to filter down on collections within jobs, for example. So if you want to find jobs from employers within those collections, you can add that. We've also added a way to simply add a link to the collection within your targeted email. And then also we've updated the way that this content looks within the email. In the past, this would actually look really kind of spread out and not really readable, but we've updated it to cleaner and more effective. And so this is a really great way for you to more directly highlight collections, highlight jobs and employers who are within those collections to your students. On top of that, we also have added a few saved reports. I believe those are available within the saved reports. We've also recently added some more information about employer collections within the employer activity snapshot, so you can kind of get a sense for how those collections are performing. And yeah, maybe Britt, if we have a link to pop in about some of the save reports, we can do that as well. All right, so that is employer collections. I'll talk a little bit about the beta and what we learned, and then some of the things that we're continuing to explore. So we ran a beta of this over kind of the spring. We got a lot of really great feedback from you all. Some of the top areas of feedback are an expanded list of employer collections. We actually sent out a survey recently, got a lot of really great feedback on that, and have a good sense of some collections that we hope to add. So keep an eye out on those. More to come there. Enhanced collection targeting. A big one is additional places to highlight boosted employers to students. This is something we are definitely working on. So right now, as you saw, it lives within the Career Center page, but we are also planning to add kind of information within the jobs experience that indicates that the job is from a boosted employer. Also filters within that job experience, so you can tell the students, filter on, great for alumni, and they can see all the jobs from employers within that collection. And then also folks are interested in boosting jobs, which is something we are certainly interested in investing in, and we'll have more on that as well. So all of the feedback, we really appreciate everybody who took part in the beta, take parts in our surveys, and are giving us feedback on this. This is a huge area of investment for us. We've spent a lot of time really refining this, and we know that you want to continue to highlight those collections, and we're doing a lot of work to make sure that that is a really great experience, not only for your team, but for your students. Okay, great. Next up, I'll talk about employer tags. Okay, so employer tags is something we released a few weeks ago, and it is it's basically a crowdsourced or semi-crowdsourced employer categorization based on moral, ethical, or legal decline reasons. So it's basically based on the reasons that you're picking when you're declining an employer. So when I decline an employer, these are the options I'm given. If their industry does not align with our school policy, we can select one of those industries, for example. Upon declining an employer for one of these reasons, it gets sent to our trust and safety team. They analyze that and they determine, okay, this is, for example, if I decline this employer as a cannabis company, they'll look at it and say, yes, this is a cannabis company, or no, this is not a cannabis company. And if it is a cannabis company, that employer will then be tagged as a cannabis company. And what that looks like here is it'll show up here in the employer has been tagged with line. You'll also be able to filter your employers or your pending or your approved, any of your employers based on tags, and see which ones are tagged. A couple things to note about tags. So For 2 of the tags, we do not moderate, meaning if an employer is tagged for one of these 2 reasons, either ideological/religious objection to industry, or employer does not comply with local, state, federal, or other legal guidelines. If an employer is declined for one of those 2 reasons, they're automatically being tagged. For the first one, we don't feel it's our place to make an assessment on if an employer does or does not fall within your school's kind of ideological or religious stance. If you decline it for that, we're going to trust you that is a reason that you believe. And then the second is the local, state, federal, or other legal guidelines. Again, this one is very hard for us to validate because there is such a wide variety of different guidelines in different locations. So if your team is declining an employer for that reason, we're going to trust you with that as well, that your team, obviously knows a lot more about that in your specific area than we do. So those 2 are not moderated. There are some that, in addition to moderation, we are supplementing. So things like cannabis, things like alcohol and tobacco that have clear keywords. When the employer creates their account, we can essentially search on specific keywords and determine if we want to tag them as well. So for a good amount of them, we are supplementing those as well as taking in the crowdsourced feedback. The whole point is we're trying to build a really solid network of employers who may not meet these, or who may be tagged with these criteria. We've already gotten a ton of tags in from you all, thousands, and it's been a really great experience so far. So with employer tags, obviously you can filter on it within pending, within approved. You can also, within your school settings, leverage it in your employer approval preferences. So you can say, essentially auto approve all employers except those that meet one of these tagged reasons. So then if an employer is above 80%, but is a cannabis company, they will not be automatically approved. We are going to continue enhancing this tags functionality as we progress a lot of our initiatives here. So appreciate you all being diligent and adding tags, et cetera. Okay. The last demo today is the feature that we plan to be releasing later this month, which is job automatic approval rules. So we are extremely excited about releasing this functionality. It's basically a tool that will allow you to automatically approve jobs, except for those that meet a specific, essentially like review queue criteria. So it's going to live here. As you can see, I don't have access to this. You're going to need explicit permission to create these rules. So I have the managed staff, so I can go in and give myself this permission. I'll show you where it is. So here in show permissions, it's this manage job automatic approval. Once you turn that on, I can go ahead and save that and go back to jobs. All right, so when we turn this on, essentially what this means is it's going to be automatically approving all jobs except for those that meet one or any of the criteria that you've defined here. And we picked this criteria based on our like a survey. We've done surveys, we've done analysis on the most common criteria folks are looking at and filtering on, but certainly are open to hearing more about the criteria that we're releasing in this first iteration and can add more. But if I say, okay, auto approve all jobs except for internships, auto approve all jobs except for graphic designers, auto approve all jobs except for permanent, for example, or maybe more realistically like seasonal. What's going to happen is when I apply that, any new job that comes into the system, so it's not going to be applied to pre-existing pending jobs, but any new job that comes in that meets one or any of these criteria, it's essentially OR logic. So if it is an internship, or if it's a graphic designer, or if it's both, it will not be automatically approved. Otherwise, it will be automatically approved. The other thing we're going to be adding here within the approved section is the ability for you to filter on all the jobs that were automatically approved. So your team can go in and take a look and just make sure you're comfortable with what has shown up there. And with that, that is it for the demos. Britt, am I missing anything?
No, that was great. And we got a lot of good questions in the Q&A that were answered, and we'll get to more of those live in just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, happy to talk through all that stuff live for sure. Okay, I think I'm going to be handing it over to Kajal to talk about employer validation.
Yes, and Kajal, I can run your slides unless you'd like to.
No, you can go ahead and do it. Thank you, Britt. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Kajal. I am a lead product manager on the job side of our product, pronouns she, her. I'm going to go ahead and jump right into employer validation. So what is employer validation? Well, ultimately, we want to ensure that we are able to set up the right layer of trust and security on our platform, and we have the right layer of validation that is occurring by our trust and safety team and within our product to ensure that the correct employers are actually posting jobs and accessing your students. So the graphic over here kind of lays out the overall flow of employer validation. And it again really highlights how our Handshake's very own trust and safety team is and will continue to work very closely with SIFT, who is a leading fraud prevention provider, as well as Google Web Risk API, to ensure that our validation processes are in place. So let's go left to right, and we'll kind of just go through this flow. First, as you can see here, the activities that employer validation will really be looking at is looking at when accounts are created and edited, looking at login activity by an employer, looking at the type of jobs that that employer posts, and the type of messages that are being sent. Once any of those activities occurs, then we have that green box that you see over there where SIFT will evaluate against rules that we have set up, as well as industry rules around, is this user or employer or job or message fraudulent? Is it malicious? Has there been an account takeover that's occurred? Is there any reason to mark this user or employer to be reviewed? We will also be partnering with Google Web Risks API to ensure that all websites that a company creates during account creation are validated through the Google Web Risk API. So really doubling down on the feedback that we've been hearing from our EDU partners around malicious websites that are placed within the employer account creation journey. We really want to tackle that head first. If an employer is marked for review, what will occur, or blocked, there could be one of two options. If they are marked for review, they will go directly to our trust and safety team, and our trust and safety team will conduct a set of manual steps to determine, does that employer need to be suspended or not? If the employer is suspended, then the employer will not be able to use our platform. They will not be able to access the students, post jobs, send messages, and basically not be able to use the platform as if they've been flagged to be suspended by each of you. So let's go over to the next slide. Thank you, Britt. So this is just kind of me diving into that manual validation process. If an employer, again, is marked to be manually validated or reviewed, our trust and safety team is going to ensure that they carry out the right steps to determine, is this employer able to use our platform or not? The steps that we have listed here are also going to ensure that we have a quick turnaround, because we do know that several times each of you have partnerships with smaller employers, and we want to ensure that they are able to use our product if they meet the threshold of trust and safety that we have established. In general, again, we're really hoping the process does not take more than 48 hours if they are being reviewed. So the different steps that are here is like, we will look for potential endorsement by a university partner. We know several of you have relationships with some small employers, and they may end up in a manual review queue. We want to ensure that we can contact you as their institutional contact and easily be able to communicate with them. A second piece is looking at proof of personal identity, proof of affiliation with the company, looking at evidence on companies' public platforms, as well as looking at content that's been loaded into Handshake and device information. So this is just some of the pieces that we will be looking at, but the list is pretty extensive and just highlighting several of the key areas that our trust and safety will leverage to manually validate an employer. Let's go over to the next slide. Okay, so in general, why are we doing employer validation? Maybe taking a step back, we're creating and delivering this entire process of employer validation to ultimately replace our trust score. As many of you know, our trust score is a 0 to 100 score and has many limitations that do not necessarily set up our employers or our EDU partners up for success. And that is where employer validation comes into play. Instead of us doing like an immediate shift, like from one day where we just turn off the trust score and completely start depending on SIFT. We will be doing a gradual approach. And this is a very conceptual diagram to showcase that we will start in probably like late fall or middle of fall and start gradually shifting what we call our trust score to start incorporating more and more of the SIFT results until we get to a point where the trust score is fully removed. Our goal again with this is really to make this change as seamless as possible for each of you. And that is why we have thoughtfully considered this approach. Let's go to the next slide. And then so ultimately, like late fall, we will get to the point where the trust score is removed. And along that getting removed, you will start seeing certain changes occurring within the product itself. You will not see the trust score listed, as you can see here in this mock, and the icon button that shows up. You may also start seeing certain information highlighted around employer tags, information that is much more relevant to you using the product as it stands today. Let's go to the next slide. I think, yeah, okay, great. So Britt, I will hand it over to you and then happy to answer any questions that folks have.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Kajal. And sorry for the weird slide switching. I was twitching a little bit. But I'm going to take us home with some additional resources to help your team learn more about this vision to increase your students' access and embed your team's expertise into Handshake, and to learn about these individual product updates as well. So first and foremost, all of these milestones that we talked about and more are detailed in this white paper, Open Network Expert Guidance. If you haven't read it yet, highly recommend checking it out. Share it with your teammates. I can see my colleague Allison is dropping that in the chat right now. So this is good for like a broad understanding of where we're headed over the next couple of years. And then if you want to get more specific, we've got a ton of deep dive resources to help you get started with all of the different features that we talked about today. These links are also going to get dropped in the chat. First, we did 2 different training webinars in June, one on signal boosting via employer collections and the other on employer validation and the automation features we discussed today. So both of those provide a great kind of expansion on the content that you heard today. We've also got 3 what I like to call quick start blogs that are all about helping you understand these features in a shorter amount of time. So we're just hitting the highlights. Great to help you get started using these features really quickly. And then finally, if you want the deep dive, we launched a Handshake Academy course that allows you to spend a lot of time with our signal boosting feature and yeah, learn more about how to implement it. And when you complete the course, you can also get a certification to put on LinkedIn, which is nice. Finally, I said this before, we're going to get through as many questions as we can today. We've got 2 more office hour sessions coming up. So you can always come back and ask us questions here. But your relationship manager is also ready and willing to chat with you about any of these features and also talk about integrating them into your team's workflows as we head into the back to school season. All right, let's do some Q&A. We've got 16 minutes and we've gotten a lot of really great questions coming in. So give me 1 second while I reset to take a look at what we want to answer live. Okay, so we got great questions from Britta and Stephanie that are kind of in a similar vein, so I want to address them together. Britta asked if there is an easy way to auto-approve jobs that require or prefer a degree. Could there be a box for an employer to check where they are acknowledging that a degree is required or preferred? In a similar vein, Stephanie asked, for the auto-approved jobs, is there an option to include the number of years experience and educational level required? For example, auto-approved jobs that require a minimum of a bachelor's degree and less than 3 years experience. These are both really good questions. And Kajal, I want to tap you to help answer this because right now, there's not a way to do this. And it comes down to the information that we collect from the employer in a structured way when they're building the job. So we don't have like a structured field now to ask for years of experience. We can collect the preferred school years from the employer, but that doesn't quite translate to like the degree that they're looking for. So I think right now, these are both really good points and potentially like future areas of exploration that we could look at on the job form. to collect more structured data. Kajal, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, Britt gave a great summary, but to each of you on the call, just to give you some background and full clarity into what we are doing on the employer side of our product. We are fully acknowledging that the employer side of their product, especially the job form, can use enhancements exactly like the ones you have mentioned here. And our goal is, yes, to get to a point where we collect more structured data. It could be years of experience, qualifications, types of skills that the employer is looking for. And all of this, I think, will better be able to be translated to each of you that is trying to curate the best jobs for your students. And it will really help when it comes to job discovery for our students also, so that they can find the most relevant jobs based on their years of experience, the skills they have, the qualifications they feel that they can meet. So all very much aligned to our strategy. Won't be able to like give specific timelines around it yet, but we do acknowledge that it is happening. And second is we will be going through an effort with Britt, Brendan, myself to better collect these type of feedback from each of you to make sure that we have what we call like the entirety of that ideal list, and then try to figure out what of that can we really pull into the job form. So more on that in the near future, but we will definitely be leveraging our EDU partner network to kind of understand what that research looks like. Brendan, I'm Britt. I'm not sure if I have said anything I misspoken anywhere, so let's just feel free to add in.
No,
Brendan,
that's
looks like
I have another question that I'm happy to speak to if you want to.
go for it. Yeah.
Great. So I think Robin asked a really interesting question about having employers who change the location of their job from off campus to on campus after it has been approved. This change does not cause the job to go back into pending. So we don't know if this is happening unless we review all on campus jobs posted all the time. Is this being addressed? So this is a really great question. Certainly in this iteration, and even with these job auto approval rules, it's not going to automatically recheck approved jobs and put them back into pending. That being said, we do plan and we hope to be adding new permissions for jobs, specifically for on-campus jobs. So in future iterations of this, you're going to have the ability to essentially say, this employer, yes, I do want to continue to allow them to post on-campus jobs or not. So you will really be able to control which employers are going to be posting those type of jobs. So hopefully that will help solve this case. I know we've heard things like this before, and it's certainly not ideal, right? We definitely don't want employers incorrectly like posting their jobs. So that's kind of one of the reasons that we're hoping to implement some more permissions and think of it similar to how work study works today. But yeah, definitely more to come there. Yeah.
Awesome. There was a really good question from Barry that I wanted to address too, kind of a multi-parter. Barry wanted to clarify. So Brendan did a demo of employer tags, which helps you identify employers that you might like to review. You potentially might need to decline based on campus policies for things like being a cannabis company or a third-party recruiter. So those decline reasons represent, moral, ethical, or legal reasons why you could block an employer. And that will remain the case throughout Handshake's future vision. So you'll always be able to block employers based on those reasons. Barry also mentioned, and I want to find the language here. Okay, here it is. I have some companies in the past that we will not allow to recruit here due to issues that occurred. So I'm wondering if that is still an option for us. So I wanted to call out that in addition to employer tags, there is also still the flow of flagging an employer. So we may have used the words interchangeably here, but these are separate flows. A tag identifies an employer as something like a cannabis company or a third-party recruiter. Flagging is about identifying that an employer has engaged in inappropriate activity. And Barry, in the particular case that you've brought up, I think that would be the proper way to address that type of incident. When you flag an employer for inappropriate activity, you will always be able to decline them as a part of that process. So that's another workflow where like those particular types of instances come up, and that triggers a different review process with our trust and safety team to investigate the employer and potentially suspend them from Handshake. So I wanted to clarify that those two distinct workflows will continue to exist and are very important for for different reasons in managing employers. Kajal, Brendan, anything you'd add to that? Great.
No, you got it.
Cool. All right. So Steve asked, is it possible to have multiple filters to create job auto approval rules? Is it possible to have, oh, okay. It's a great question. And the answer is yes. And I think this is a good opportunity to bring up another, or to clarify a point too. When you're setting up those job auto approval rules, yes, you can select multiple like values within each category. So for example, one of the things you can set exceptions based on is employer industry. So you could pick 2 industries and have those both be things that you want to review manually. When you're choosing criteria from different categories, so like, let's say job type, employer industry, I want to make sure that we hit the point that this logic is or based. So if you say, I want to, yeah, as Brendan is showing, I want to set exceptions for graphic design, high school teachers, special education teachers, and then you also say the aerospace industry, architecture and planning, you know, you can see how you could have multiple selections for each of these. It is or logic. So you are going to here, what we're looking at, review jobs that come in from employers that are in the aerospace industry, or jobs that are from employers that are in the architecture and planning industry, or jobs that are part-time. So in certain cases, especially if you use a lot of these filters, you're going to get an over-inclusive list. So you are not defining like a very specific type of job here, you know, like a part-time internship in graphic design. You are pulling in internships and graphic design jobs and part-time jobs. So we intentionally made this a little bit more over-inclusive so that your team can kind of dip your toe into the water of auto approval and feel more comfortable. But that's an important, I think, like clarifying piece to understand about how these work. Cool. All righty. Let's see what else we got.
I can
go,
take
please.
Tierney's question, or Brendan and myself can. So the question was, can we clarify what happens if we do not auto approve an employer or a job? Do we have the opportunity to decline jobs or employers, or are they left pending? If left pending, how do we navigate the queue? So let's answer that in a couple of parts. What happens if you don't auto approve the employer or the job? They will end up in your pending queue. And as of until today, you'll be able to decide to decline the job or the employer. In future phases, we will continue to make updates there where we replace that employer decline with additional enhancements and continued work around curation. Do you have the opportunity to decline them? Or are they left pending? We said they're left pending. And how do we navigate that pending volume? So that's actually a really great question and kind of ties back directly into what Brendan had showed. The way we want to really navigate that pending volume for our employers is leveraging what we showed as employer tags. So giving you an ability to be able to make a decision across the list of employers you see there and easily be able to sort which employers you want to decline based on the tags. Maybe you want to decline all the cannabis employers, or you want to decline all the employers that are associated with the adult entertainment industry. You can make that decision by using employer tags. And that should really ideally help you with the volume, as well as obviously auto approval will help you with the volume. Brendan, is there anything else I missed?
Yeah, just to be a little more clear, I know we've talked a lot about changes that are coming. And one of the changes that we've communicated is that we're ultimately, after we've implemented employer validation, we're going to be removing the employer approval step. So basically, employers will no longer need to be approved to post a job at your institution, but you will still have to approve their first job in order for that employer to engage with your students, like message them, in order for that employer to post events, in order to do the things that they would do if they're approved. So part of our redesign, and we're going to be showing this in the near future, is creating a new kind of jobs experience that's going to tell you anytime like a new employer is coming in that you need to assess, you can approve or decline that job. You can block that employer for moral, ethical, or legal reasons. You can flag that employer and block them. We also understand that this will likely increase the queue of pending jobs that come in. And another part of our redesign is making it very easy for you to sort those jobs, specifically based on the review criteria that you're defining in the kind of the new modal, right? So when you're saying, here are all the types of jobs that we want to review, we're going to make it very easy for you to quickly filter on, okay, I said I want to review all internships. Now I can look at all internships. I said I want to review all, civil engineering jobs. Now I can look at all those. We're going to make it like one very clean filter that you can go in. the goal is, especially as we move off of the employer level approvals, to still give you the control of approving jobs, obviously approving events, fairs, things that you continue to do. Just make it a lot easier for you to assess that employer in the context of their first activity, right? So today, we ask you to approve the employer without seeing what job they're posting. Tomorrow, you're going to be approving the employer when they post their first job. So you'll see, okay, this is the first job. I do want to let this employer in for the rest, or I don't. So obviously more to come on that. And I know we'll bring it to life with visuals, but we are certainly focused on not making your life more difficult here, right? We want to make it easier for you to auto approve the jobs that you're comfortable with, manage the employers and jobs, and very quickly and efficiently get through your workflow. So more to come, certainly. And excited to kind of get into that in future sessions.
Great. I think Barry also asked about whether we were considering raising the cap on employer collections from 50. I shared that this is something we're having internal discussions about. We know that it's been an ask, especially from distributed campuses who want to be able to add more employers per individual career center. We don't have any finalized plans on that front just yet, but definitely something on our radar, and we will keep you posted if we decide to increase that limit.
Yeah, and one collection that we are considering that we got a ton of great feedback for is a grade 4 major collection, which can be pretty, every school has a lot of majors. So there's an opportunity here for you to have a lot more collections and a lot more targeted collections as well. So we're still kind of balancing if adding that collection as well as increasing the limit makes sense, or if adding that collection, which gives you a lot more opportunities to target collections is the right approach, or both. So obviously more to come here. We do, the reason that it is 50 is because we do want these to be very pointed and specific. And, sometimes an employer, you might want to boost them for a given amount of time. You might want to unboost them. And we also want to make sure that students feel like these are really valuable recommendations. And, an employer is not added to every single collection that you have, but we obviously are open to feedback on this front. And yeah, we will certainly be, again, adding new collections, adding more collections, and potentially looking at increasing that limit as well.
Cool. Okay. Thora asked a really good and I think spicy question. You've mentioned as we've approached this release, that job posting approval volume will increase. What do you envision for the % increase in job posting approval volume so we can plan for bandwidth coverage? It's a really good question. Oh, and Brendan, you're not going to answer. Okay, I'm going to answer this. So it all depends on how you approach auto approval, right? So you've got two different options here to help with that volume. One is choosing to auto approve employers, which right now you can do based on the trust score. In the future, when everybody's validated, you can just auto approve all validated employers while making exceptions for tagged employers. So that's one very top level way that you can manage a lot of auto approvals. On the job level, you have these job auto approval rules that help you manage that volume as well. So I would highly encourage you, if there are types of jobs that you know are always going to get approved by you, you set up rules so that those jobs can be approved while you're pulling out the ones that you want to look at more closely. So using those two features in tandem can help you drastically reduce the amount of time that you have to spend on approvals. Now, when it comes to the raw number of additional jobs that we see coming through, it's going to depend primarily on the employer's desire to post those jobs to your institution, at least in the next 6 months to a year. So depending on how that fleshes out, and Brendan, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think we were thinking something like 5 to 15% increase, probably.
That's the estimate, right? That's the estimate right now. And I think what we can do, Brendan, as we've discussed, is continue to use these sessions to continue to keep our EDU partners informed if we have more updated numbers. But we're thinking 5 to 15% at least for when employer approval goes away, and then up to an X percentage when job approvals goes away, and it becomes much more specific to school specific requests.
Yeah, but that kind of job approval piece is way down the road, and we're going to have a lot more, updates to make prior to that around curation and things of that nature. That 5 to 15% is also like a huge variance, right? It's the reason why it's hard to give a number here is because every school is different, and some schools could see a larger spike, some schools could see a lesser spike. These are obviously just averages, and ultimately the reason why we're building these tools, like the core focus of a lot of the tools that we're building, not only what we showed today, but what we will be showing in future sessions, is to ensure that you can effectively manage any increase in job volume and make sure your time is like well spent focusing on the types of jobs that you're most interested in assessing.
Awesome. All right, we are a little over time. I know we didn't get to everyone's questions. Please don't hesitate to reach out to your relationship manager to talk about those, or come join us in 2 more weeks where we do this again. We will get through as many more questions as we can. When the webinar ends, you're going to see a quick survey pop up asking what you thought of today's content. Please let us know, and hope to see you again in a webinar soon. Have a great week, everyone.